Have you ever woken up, coffee in hand, only to step out and wonder why your front yard looks like it's been hit by a monsoon? That was my reality 3 weeks ago. I shuffled outside with my cup of coffee, still half asleep, only to be greeted by puddles shimmering in the early light and my single garden hose warm as if it had been running non-stop through the night. I live alone. No kids, no roommates, no secret society of garden gnomes sneaking water to their hidden underground villages. Just me, my coffee, and what appeared to be a yard that watered itself. At first, I suspected a glitch with my non-existent automatic sprinklers. Then I noticed something else. The water bill had spiked, not by a few dollars, but like I was filling a swimming pool every night. Curiosity turned to suspicion as I started asking around. Most neighbors were friendly and nonchalant, except for one person, Karen. And, yes, her name really was Karen. She had moved in only a couple of months ago, but quickly set herself up as the self-appointed guardian of our community's pristine standards. I'd heard the whispers already. Karen was the type to file complaints about the shade of green on a neighbor's shutters or the alignment of lawn ornaments. So when I discovered that my water was mysteriously disappearing, I soon learned from hushed conversations that Karen had been spotted near my property, fiddling with my water meter. I couldn't believe it. Karen, of all people, had stolen my water. I watched in disbelief as security camera footage later confirmed her sneaking around my house at odd hours, siphoning off water to fuel her own absurd agenda. But that wasn't the end of it. As I delved deeper into the mystery, I uncovered evidence that hinted at something far more sinister lurking beneath her petty theft. Unbeknownst to Karen, my water wasn't just any water. It was the lifeblood of a meticulously maintained system I'd set up to recycle and purify rainwater. And when I discovered that her actions had not only drained my resources, but had triggered a malfunction in my custom filtration unit, I knew I had to take drastic action. In that charged moment, as I pieced together the puzzle and the absurdity of the situation sank in, I decided that passive frustration wouldn't suffice. I had a plan that would not only reclaim what was rightfully mine, but would also expose Karen's overreach in a way she'd never forget. Today, she was going to get a sewage surprise that would turn her world upside down. Oakwood Terrace was the picture of suburban perfection. Immaculate lawns, perfectly trimmed hedges, and houses that all looked as if they had been designed by the same meticulous architect. Every resident of our little community took immense pride in maintaining the neighborhood's flawless appearance. At the heart of this perfection was the Homeowners Association, HOA, which enforced strict guidelines meant to preserve our collective image. The rules were detailed, right down to the acceptable shade of green for grass, and any deviation, however minor, was met with swift intervention. Enter Karen, or HOA Karen, as she was widely known. In her early 50s, Karen had quickly established herself as the self-appointed enforcer of Oakwood Terrace's rules. With her sharply tailored suits, perfectly coiffed hair, and a smartphone always in hand, she patrolled the neighborhood like a hawk. Karen took every opportunity to report what she saw as infractions, from mismatched fence paint to the wrong type of garden ornament. Her dedication to order was legendary, and while some residents admired her fervor, others whispered behind closed doors about her overzealous nature. I, on the other hand, had always believed in a little bit of chaos to keep life interesting. My home was modest, but full of character, a mix of modern touches with quirky, personal details that didn't exactly conform to the neighborhood's strict aesthetic. One of the things I cherished most was my innovative water system, a rainwater collection and purification setup I'd built from scratch. It was designed to be eco-friendly and efficient, a project that showcased my passion for technology and sustainability. Little did anyone know, it also kept my water bills remarkably low until Karen's meddling turned that system into a liability. While most of the residents of Oakwood Terrace were content with the status quo, I valued creativity and personal expression. I had chosen to break from the norm, decorating my home in a style that some called eccentric and others boldly unique. And it was this very uniqueness that had drawn Karen's ire. When she noticed something amiss with my water usage, Her eyes lit up with the satisfaction of a guardian ready to enforce the rules, even if it meant stooping to petty theft. The physical setting of Oakwood Terrace only heightened the drama. Picture a row of identical houses, each with a manicured lawn and a sense of uniformity, contrasted sharply by my own home, a beacon of individuality with its unusual color palette and innovative technology. In such an environment, any divergence from the norm was bound to attract attention. And in this case, Karen's fixation on maintaining a perfect order had led her to do something unthinkable: stealing my water. As neighbors went about their routines, the undercurrent of tension was palpable. Whispers traveled along the cul-de-sac. "Did you hear? Karen was spotted near that house again." Soon, the mystery of the missing water became the talk of the community. The stage was set for a showdown that wasn't just about water. It was about the right to live differently in a place that prized conformity over creativity. And for me, it was about defending my work, my ideals, and my freedom to innovate without interference. The mystery of the disappearing water escalated quickly. My initial confusion gave way to suspicion, and as I started reviewing my water meter readings and security footage, a pattern began to emerge. Late at night, when the streets were quiet, the camera caught a shadowy figure creeping near my property. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. The intruder's movements were deliberate, as if they were well aware of my setup. It wasn't long before I recognized the figure: Karen, with her determined gait and a look that screamed she was on a mission. I immediately reached out to a few trusted neighbors. One by one, they confirmed their own strange experiences: unexplained surges in their water bills, odd noises at night near their lawns, and glimpses of someone fiddling with their water meters. The more I heard, the clearer it became. This wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader pattern of behavior by Karen. She seemed to believe that if someone didn't conform to her vision of a proper home, they deserved to pay the price, even if that price was stolen water. Enraged, yet determined, I began collecting all the evidence I could. I saved every frame of the security footage, documented the irregularities in my water usage, and even recorded conversations with neighbors who had witnessed suspicious activity. I compiled a dossier that left no room for doubt. Karen had been sneaking around, siphoning off water from my rainwater collection system. And why would she do that? It was clear to me that she intended to create a pretext for further enforcement actions by the HOA. I decided to confront the situation head-on. At the next HOA meeting, I presented my evidence. I laid out the security footage on a projector, showing the unmistakable image of Karen near my water system. I detailed the anomalies in my water meter readings and the abrupt spikes in my bill. I even shared testimonies from several neighbors who had experienced similar issues. The room fell silent as I explained that this wasn't just a case of poor system maintenance. It was an orchestrated act of mischief, an abuse of power designed to force me into compliance with the HOA's strict standards. Karen, who had expected to be the unquestioned enforcer of order, was visibly shaken by the presentation. Her usual confident veneer cracked under the weight of the evidence. While some board members murmured their support for my claims, others remained loyal to her, arguing that there must be an innocent explanation for the water anomalies. But the digital evidence was overwhelming, and the collective support from my neighbors was growing louder with every passing moment. As the meeting adjourned, heated debates broke out in the hallways of the community center. Many residents expressed their outrage, recalling previous instances where Karen had overstepped her bounds in the name of enforcing conformity. Online, the story exploded. Hashtags like #WaterThief and #HOA Misconduct began trending, and video clips of the security footage were shared widely, each one reinforcing the narrative that Karen was abusing her power. The conflict was no longer contained within the walls of the HOA meeting. It had spilled into the streets of Oakwood Meadows, creating an undercurrent of dissent that could not be ignored. Every shared post, every comment of support for my fight, only served to deepen the divide between those who valued strict conformity and those who believed in the right to individual expression. It was clear that Karen's actions had ignited a spark, a spark that was about to set the stage for a full-blown battle over the future of our community. As the tension mounted, I knew that something decisive had to be done. The next step was to force the HOA to take concrete action against Karen's repeated abuse of power. I began to mobilize support for a public hearing, gathering signatures and rallying neighbors who were fed up with the arbitrary enforcement of rules. My digital dossier, now circulating widely online, became the backbone of this movement, a testament to the idea that when personal bias is exposed, no one is above accountability. By the close of the day, it was clear that my fight was no longer just about my stolen water. It was a symbol of the broader struggle for fairness in a community where the rules were enforced not by justice, but by the whims of those who claimed to know what was best for everyone. And as the sun set over Oakwood Meadows, the stage was set for a dramatic escalation that would force our entire neighborhood to confront the abuses of power head-on. In the days that followed the explosive revelation, Oakwood Meadows was transformed by a wave of digital activism and public outcry. The video footage of Karen's late-night escapade and my detailed expose of the water theft were shared thousands of times across social media platforms. Hashtags like #WaterThief, #HOAExposed, and #NoMoreHOAing flooded online forums, and soon local news outlets were broadcasting the story with fervor. Residents, who had long been intimidated by the strict enforcement of HOA rules, began to rally together. At impromptu gatherings on our manicured streets, neighbors shared their own experiences of being harassed by Karen's obsessive vigilance. "I've seen her report the color of someone's mailbox," one resident said during a live stream, his voice tinged with both anger and relief that someone was finally standing up to the tyranny. The digital narrative shifted rapidly, from a petty neighborhood dispute to a broader critique of the HOA's unchecked power. Meanwhile, the HOA board was thrown into turmoil. In emergency meetings, board members debated the legitimacy of Karen's actions, with heated exchanges that revealed long-standing divisions. Some members, swayed by the mounting digital evidence and the overwhelming support for reform, argued that Karen's behavior was part of a disturbing pattern that had eroded trust in the board's decisions. "We cannot allow one person to dictate the terms of our community's future," one board member argued, his voice rising in emotion. Others tried to defend her, citing her years of service, but the tide of public opinion was impossible to ignore. Local police also entered the fray. At a press conference, Officer Aaron Lewis stated, "Our duty is to serve every resident, and when we see evidence of misconduct, even by private entities, we must act." In this case, the evidence clearly shows a deliberate abuse of power. We support the call for accountability and urge everyone to stand up for their rights. His measured tone lent an official credibility to the growing movement for reform. Public forums and town hall meetings became the battleground for debate. At one particularly well-attended session, residents poured their hearts out about how Karen's overreach had stifled creativity and personal freedom. "We live in a community where our individuality should be celebrated, not punished," a young mother declared passionately, her voice echoing through the packed room. Every testimonial, every shared video clip, added momentum to the call for a reevaluation of our HOA policies. Online petitions quickly gathered thousands of signatures demanding that the HOA board take action against Karen's repeated abuses. The digital evidence, from time-stamped security footage to detailed accounts from affected residents, was presented as irrefutable proof of a systemic problem. Influential local bloggers and community activists joined the conversation, amplifying the message that no resident should be subjected to arbitrary fines or intrusive behavior simply because they dared to live differently. As the pressure mounted, I continued to share updates and behind-the-scenes footage of my own efforts to mobilize the community. Every post on social media, every supportive comment became a rallying cry that reinforced the belief that we deserve better. In Oakwood Meadows, where the rights of every individual were respected, and where personal freedom was not sacrificed at the altar of conformity. The situation reached a crescendo when the HOA board announced a final public hearing to address the complaints against Karen and to discuss sweeping reforms. The news sent shockwaves through Oakwood Meadows. Residents prepared for the hearing with a mix of anticipation and determination, knowing that the outcome would set the course for our neighborhood's future. Digital petitions, trending hashtags, and countless shared videos all pointed to one undeniable truth. The residents of Oakwood Meadows were no longer willing to tolerate the abuse of power. The mounting public outcry, coupled with the undeniable digital evidence, forced the board to acknowledge that the status quo could not continue. The HOA board's final decision, whether to sanction Karen, revise the rules, or even remove her from her position, was now the subject of intense scrutiny. The community was united in the demand that accountability prevail over arbitrary rule enforcement. And as the day of the final hearing drew near, the tension in Oakwood Meadows was palpable, a collective readiness to rewrite the rules in the name of justice and freedom. The decisive moment arrived on a brisk morning in a packed boardroom at the Oakwood Meadows Community Center. The room was filled with HOA officials, local police representatives, community leaders, and a diverse cross-section of residents, all gathered for the final public hearing that would determine the fate of Karen Stevens' actions. With a calm yet commanding presence, Councilwoman Denise Carter stepped up to the podium, her eyes scanning the expectant crowd. After an exhaustive review of digital evidence, security footage, and the heartfelt testimonies of our residents, we have reached an inescapable conclusion. Councilwoman Carter began, her voice steady and resolute. It is evident that the complaints issued by Mrs. Karen Stevens, specifically the unfounded accusation regarding my neighbor's water usage, were driven not by a genuine concern for community order, but by personal bias and an abuse of power. This is not merely about a stolen drop of water. It is about ensuring that every resident's rights are respected and that public resources are not exploited for petty vendettas. A heavy silence fell over the room as Carter continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will rescind all fines related to these baseless claims and initiate a full disciplinary review of Mrs. Stevens' conduct. Furthermore, we will implement new guidelines that ensure transparency and protect the rights of every homeowner. Our decision today reflects the collective will of Oakwood Meadows, a community that stands for justice, freedom, and the celebration of individuality. Her declaration resonated deeply, and murmurs of agreement spread throughout the assembly. At that moment, a respected community advocate, known for his unwavering commitment to fairness, rose to speak. Today, we reclaim our neighborhood from those who would impose their narrow views on all of us, he proclaimed, his voice firm and impassioned. No one, no matter how zealous, should be allowed to misuse community power to suppress personal freedom. Let this vote be a turning point, a clear signal that Oakwood Meadows will no longer tolerate arbitrary enforcement. We demand accountability, and we stand united in our right to live freely. His words were met with a thunderous round of applause, uniting the room in a shared commitment to change. Following his declaration, a senior police official presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of all digital evidence, internal logs, and eyewitness accounts that documented every instance of Karen's intrusive behavior. The evidence was undeniable. The water discrepancies were traced directly to her unauthorized tampering, and every complaint was shown to be a product of personal vendetta rather than any real violation. The Internal Affairs panel unanimously endorsed strict disciplinary measures against Mrs. Stevens, and the full report was scheduled for public release to ensure complete transparency. Councilwoman Carter concluded, "Let this resolution mark a new era for Oakwood Meadows, a community where truth, freedom, and accountability prevail. Today, we not only rescind unwarranted fines, but also commit ourselves to a future where every resident is respected and personal bias is met with the full force of community will." Our vote today is a declaration that Oakwood Meadows stands for justice above all. Her final words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our fight for fairness. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom reflected shock, determination, and hope, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. The overwhelming digital evidence and the unified voice of the community had forced a decisive change that would forever reshape the way Oakwood Meadows was governed. The turning point was clear. The days of petty, arbitrary enforcement were over, and a future built on transparency and respect was finally within our grasp. In the weeks following the historic vote, Oakwood Meadows began to experience a profound transformation. News of the rescinded fines and the sweeping reforms announced by the HOA board spread rapidly through local media and social networks, igniting a vibrant dialogue about personal freedom, accountability, and the responsible use of community power. Editorials in the local paper, with headlines like "A New Dawn for Oakwood Meadows" and "Community United for Freedom," celebrated the decisive action taken by the board. Hashtags such as #FlagForFreedom, #JusticeForOakwood, and #NoMoreHBullying flooded social media, reinforcing the community's commitment to a future where personal expression was valued. Town hall meetings and community forums became the forum for residents to share their experiences and envision a new, inclusive direction for Oakwood Meadows. Passionate speeches echoed through packed auditoriums, where neighbors declared that creativity and individual expression should never be punished but celebrated. Our community must be a place where every voice is heard. One speaker insisted, his words met with rapturous applause from an audience eager for change. Within the reformed HOA board and the local police department, sweeping policy changes were rapidly implemented. Under the guidance of forward-thinking officials, new training programs were launched that emphasized cultural sensitivity, ethical conduct, and the judicious management of community resources. Regular internal audits and transparent disciplinary procedures were established to ensure that no resident would ever again be subjected to arbitrary fines or invasive monitoring. "We are committed to upholding the rights of every resident," declared a spokesperson at a follow-up press conference, affirming that fairness and accountability were now the cornerstones of our community governance. Community leaders and civil rights organizations also played a pivotal role in the healing process. They organized workshops, public forums, and educational campaigns that promoted awareness about individual rights and the importance of diversity in a vibrant community. We must come together to create a future where every individual's heritage and creativity are celebrated, a local activist proclaimed at a well-attended forum, inspiring hope and unity among residents. For me, the journey from confrontation to resolution had been both cathartic and transformative. My decision to stand up against the HOA's unjust fine and to reveal my true credentials, as someone who had once served in international diplomacy and now worked for Homeland Security, had not only reclaimed my dignity, but had also sparked a movement for change throughout Oakwood Meadows. Neighbors who had long felt silenced by rigid rules now found their voices, and together we formed a united front that demanded that our community be governed by principles of fairness, transparency, and respect for individual freedom. Karen Stevens, once the feared enforcer of arbitrary rules, found herself increasingly isolated. Digital records of her past misdeeds, once hidden behind her veneer of authority, became public knowledge, a stark reminder that unchecked personal bias has consequences. Her case became a cautionary tale, a vivid illustration that no one is above accountability when the collective voice of a community rises in unison. At a final celebratory event held in the Central Park of Oakwood Meadows, residents, local officials, and community advocates gathered beneath the golden glow of the setting sun. A large banner reading, "Unity, Justice, and Freedom," was unfurled between towering oaks, and heartfelt speeches filled the air with promises of a brighter future. Today, we celebrate not just a victory over petty abuse of power, but the dawn of a community where every resident's rights are honored, Councilwoman Carter proclaimed, her voice ringing with determination. The standing ovation that followed was a powerful affirmation of our shared commitment to building a better, more inclusive Oakwood Meadows. As each new day dawned over our transformed neighborhood, the legacy of that fateful confrontation endured as a beacon of progress. The story of how the HOA's baseless attempt to tow my car was foiled by the revelation of my armored vehicle and my resolute declaration of real authority became a rallying cry for every resident who believed in the power of truth and accountability. It reminded us all that when a community stands together, no abuse of power can ever remain unchecked, and every act of injustice will be met with decisive action. In the end, what began as a personal battle evolved into a watershed moment for Oakwood Meadows. We emerged more united, more vigilant, and more committed to a future where every resident's rights are protected and every arbitrary rule is challenged. And as the sun rose each morning over our reclaimed neighborhood, it carried with it the promise that in Oakwood Meadows, truth and justice will forever prevail.